Hello, everybody. I'm Jason with the So Percussion, and this is a Brooklyn Bound podcast. And I believe this is the first time I've ever talked to somebody again on a Brooklyn Bound podcast, which is exciting, Darian.
Yay.
This is Darian Donovan Thomas. Welcome.
Hi.
We were just saying before I press record, or at least before we officially started, that usually, we go through, it's fun to hang with folks and go through the same series of questions and go many different ways. But you, because you've been on Brooklyn Bound before with Media Queer, you and Fong, we hung and kind of got to some of that. So you're a regular here. Media Queer did an awesome thing in August. You and Fong and Media Queer did an awesome thing with us in December, playing your instruments and making an awesome video for Julie Seisman's Stay On It. And now we are premiering your piece, our first premiere of 2021, our first commission of 2021, on February 4th. So we're pumped. Let's talk about it.
It's gonna be great.
How are you?
I'm good. Busy. I'm looking forward to 2 weeks from now when I finish a very, very large deadline and buy myself a Nintendo Switch and then just play Untitled Goose Game for a week straight. Yeah.
Wait, play what?
Untitled Goose Game.
Uh-huh.
Oh, it's beautiful. You should, if you haven't played it, you should play it. It's really...
I love it. I haven't played it. Have you ever played Roblox?
I don't think so, actually. I feel like I should.
No, I don't think you should necessarily. I was in the 80s, I guess, a bit in the 80s in the Super Mario Legend of Zelda, Mike Tyson's Punch-Out world. Not very deep, but I was there. And I feel like my only reason to get back in is going to be through kids who right now just play something called Roblox, which is not... no Switch. There's no Switch on it. All right, cool. You go. I'm excited for you to do that after your premieres. You have been busy. I've seen so many awesome things of yours in the world, some of which we've been able to do together, which is lovely. But so let's see. So I think for a long time, I'm gonna set a stage. So for a long time had written music together, or I had written music that was for flexible instrumentation. The idea that many different groups could play it, or it was flexible in certain ways. We love playing that kind of music. Terry Riley NC is a big piece like that. Julie Seisman's Stay On It is a big piece like that. Many other works. We've been playing Finola Maribel's piece, many pieces that are kind of flexible in some way. But we realized we had just never commissioned with that in mind, which seems silly. So in 2021, we're commissioning 3 pieces that are flexible in some way, with the idea that we could co-commission them with different folks who are percussion quartets, but also that aren't. And yours is the first, and it has been super thrilling to work on and put together, because we're co-commissioning it with the Bergamot Quartet, which is a string quartet, and working through these wonderful problems with you, how to make music with different instrumentalists, different groups, how to or to see you write a piece with that in mind has been really, really wonderful. So I guess let's start at the beginning. How has your way in to this kind of flexible idea? What has your way in been?
Yeah, so I guess for me, it kind of fell in line with how I treat honestly, all of my academic training and composition, which is to kind of just take the ideas that were in a textbook and then abstract them a lot until they get to almost a logical extreme and then reapply them. So in any type of ensemble writing, you kind of do just have people to play different roles, right? And this is why you have stereotypes of music, right? The timpani has just all the rests, and then they're there for the important parts. They're like a climactic character that comes in at that moment. The bass is probably going to do things that are more stable. They're like a elder or something, right? It's like, I've been here and I'm helping you keep it together. There's some manic pixie dream girl that's probably like violin or flute or something, so it's like these instruments have roles. So in something that's non-fixed, I was like, well, there are a lot of synonymous roles for things. What if I just approached it as sort of casting a play instead of writing like, this is for violin, viola, cello, or this is for marimba, vibraphone, like
Mm.
how can I reduce that and then reapply it? And that's kind of what I came up with for this. And then I just waited and listened, and gently, one by one, each of the people started kind of revealing themselves to me. And I was like, oh, there's an individual here who's responding to stress. There's a person here who's trying to kind of console that person or keep up with them and keep them centered. There's someone here acting as a chaotic force. And then there's the person giving all this information that's causing the stress as well. So the piece is made in 4 roles, right? There's the individual, there's the historian, there's chaos, and then there's a newscaster. And I kind of like the idea of maybe in the future, even if 4 people get together who don't have instruments, they can still do it. So I started including, like, you can pull sources from outside music. Like, you can go and get clips from the internet, from YouTube. You can go and find examples of chaotic things happening and play them from your phone, like, while it's happening. Because I think that helps to world build the piece.
Yeah, I love it. I've thought about it a lot as a composer, I guess, or I don't know if I've even thought about it, but I've experienced it a lot as a composer, the way I write things for flexible instrumentation, and so has thought about it a lot. This idea, when you started to talk about these 4 roles, or thinking about the performers as roles, felt kind of completely obvious, and yet I had never experienced it before. You know what I mean? Like yeah, which was really thrilling. And you got into it a little bit through at the beginning of the piece. You list a bunch of Jungian definitions.
Right, exactly.
Was that your way into thinking about these roles, or did you kind of find them and then think, oh, map them onto those ideas?
Kind of. I mean, I knew that once I had a gist of, like, this individual person is responding to stress, I knew that, like, when the individual presented themselves to me and how their music worked for at least the first section, which is to kind of go from doing something orderly into doing something that's just completely crazy and beyond the means of the performer. I thought I should probably just investigate stress and investigate, like, how different people cope with things and how that relates to archetypes if I'm working with roles and storytelling. And if there's some sort of process already dictated, written in a textbook that, like, guides a person through the process of trauma to the other side, right? And then I found, Jung's process of individuation, and his 4 archetypes. And I was like, well, this is cool. So I started reading about that, and I don't know, it helped, because there's, like, the individual as the front facing, basically the ego, right? It's like, this is the person that you see me as, and I'm trying to keep things together. Historian is your actual self. And if I remember correctly, like, this role it's supposed to kind of lead to representing the sublime self, which is the opposite gender of what you actually are, which is really beautiful.
I remember reading that in the notes as well, which was really interesting. Yeah,
this is an interesting thing that anyone could, if they wanted to grab onto that, they could. And I mean, like, with all of this, psychology has come so far that it's like, maybe this isn't necessarily a thing that's completely sustained in the psychological community at this time, but that's not really the point anymore, because it's storytelling, right? It's like, I'm trying to give performer space to express how they've been handling trauma recently, and to express how they feel on the other side of it, because there is that thing of, like, all 4 parts are doing something different, then everyone unifies. And the actual process of individuation is to not so much individualize yourself for the sake of becoming yourself, but more particularly to individualize yourself for the sake of becoming yourself, for the sake of participating and contributing to a community. So it's like being able to really recognize I am me and therefore not them, and therefore I can participate in them, is kind of a beautiful thing when it comes to, like, understanding social contracts and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of what it's doing. And you can take that as far as you want to, and you can also not.
yeah. Do you have any? So just did this collaborative workshop thing in January. We did, like, a remote collaborative. Yeah. It was awesome. But multiple times on this, and I don't know if it was just the particular people that were here, people started to talk about these archetypes of chaos, good. Like, I think a lot of it was coming through, like, a Dungeons and Dragons world.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know. But multiple times I was pegged as chaotic good.
Yes.
And I started to feel okay about that, and, like, that maybe that if you were to see my space in here, or see the space way I work, I understand there's some chaos there. But hopefully that it's positives. But it's funny, I've never really come across these kind of I haven't been deep into Jungian philosophy or and then all of a sudden I've been met with these chaotic archetypes and different archetypes, which anyway, there's something in the air right now, maybe. It's
Well, it's also all over meme culture for sure. Like there's a lot of any of those quadrant memes that you see that, I don't know, that it's really fun to place different people on that and be like, this is how they're operating IRL. Since Dungeons and Dragons does feel so much like it's the life imitating art, imitating life vibe that's happening right now.
Yeah. Other than you need a 20-sided die. Other than that, I forget a lot of the things, but yeah.
Exactly.
Well, okay, cool. So I have many questions about this that I'm realizing as we're talking. The first thing I realized was, oh wow, I don't have any questions written down. And now I realize, like, oh, amazing. I have so many things I want to ask Darian about how he's feeling about this. So like one, I'll say, I mean, I think there's been a couple pieces. Stay On It was one of them for us. Some of the Paulina Oliveros music that we played on the show that we did together at Brookfield Space, specifically her quartet. Those are maybe the two pieces we've learned during quarantine. You know, it's not like we've been learning a ton of, we've been doing like new versions of older pieces, but those were the first kind of like new big works we've learned. But this has been the first like commission that we've jumped into. And feeling like, okay, how can we collaborate based on what our value structure is, which is if the composer's into it, and usually we wouldn't ask a composer to be involved if they weren't into it, getting together a lot, sharing, you know, work in progress, sketches, all that kind of way of working. And so we've been, okay, how do we do that now? And so you've been the first, and it's blossomed into what I feel like is this really kind of been a really wonderful, weird Zoom space of the four of us, and so we'll get on, the four performers in Bergamot will get on, Darian, you'll get on, and we'll look at the first part of your piece, and each group has come up with little kind of sketches or ideas of them, and it's like a kind of wonderful sharing thing. And listening to what another quartet does with the same music for me has been eye-opening, especially because the two groups are I think philosophically maybe similar, but in so many ways different. I mean, you know, the way this music sounds on a string instrument where you like hear and feel the everything, and versus a percussion instrument that feels more like this in some way. The four Bergamots are all younger than us. They're all female. We're four white males who are middle-aged. Like there's so many, we've been many things, many things that are different about the groups. It's been wonderful to hear how we each approach it. Am I feeding you?
I think that one of the interesting things is yes. I think one of the most striking things to me was like when I first got the email of y'all's version of the maybe first section, because we came to, I think, in our first Zoom meeting discussion before I had given any music to anyone, and I had some of it kind of written down, but I was like, I'll notate it tonight and then send it to y'all. But I was like, I think the vibe is going to be everyone should try each other's part. Like everyone should do everything in it, just because it's not linked to any one thing. And I want whoever feels compelled by a part to be able to do that. And also for everyone else to understand how the parts actually relate to each other, as opposed to, because the score is kind of just like a manual, which I mean, like, is true in any case, but in this case, actually, it's like a lot of words and then like excerpts of music, being like, do this, kind of, but like, here are the words to think about. And I think everyone being able to circle through that is interesting because every individual in the quartet has a different perspective that they're bringing to these things. And so some of the versions of that first section would be super manic. Some of them were a bit slower and more placated. Some were darker and brighter. And then add into that like a whole other quartet doing it is like, technically we've heard this piece in 8 different variations over the course of the time. And that's so, it was really good news to me because I was like, oh, cool, then this actually works. Like it will sound really different per group of instruments that are playing it. And then just with like, I guess the core subject matter that like the two of you landed on was really beautiful because I wasn't sure. I like to kind of guide performers a lot with here's kind of what we're saying, because it's a lot of here's what I'm saying as Darian, but through whatever this universe of a piece is that we're making. And within that, leaving a lot of room for performers to speak. With this one, since it's non-fixed, I was like, what if I just even left the subject matter up to whatever the performer wants to say? which could go horribly wrong, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, because it could go against what I would want. But for something non-fixed, I figured like I should probably just commit all the way and make something that's non-fixed in intention as well. The point is just to say like, hey, what have you gone through? Do you all agree on going through that thing? Do you all agree on communicating about that thing? And then can you express it through this sort of formula? Which is so cool to see work, and being able to work with both of y'all at the same time, both ensembles at the same time too, really helped solidify my comfort in writing the latter sections too, and being like, great, I think it should end this way, and it'll actually work out if I write this down.
Well, I loved seeing the real time, because I feel like we've talked a little bit in terms of just like how to approach flexible stuff. Just as it's been interesting, I've loved hearing where you're coming from with it, and it seemed like the idea of leaving as much space as possible until that doesn't work. And so it's been cool to see you in real time, like really come at it from like, I'm going to challenge myself to really stay out here. And so many times that was working, and then occasionally be like,
that E flash be an F. Like,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
My bad.
But even content, or like, be like, yeah, technically it says this, but I'm feeling like this, and I've really loved, it's almost like we get to see you compose, in a way, see you make the choice, wanting to start at a space of letting that choice be open, and then being like, oh, I love all these open ones, except for this one needs to be closed in like
right. It's kind of nice, honestly, because this is a lot of the process that I go through when I'm playing my own pieces, especially if they're older, because it's a lot of I'm so glad that I don't play fluid that much anymore. This like violin and electronics piece that I have. Fortunately, I feel very fortunate that other people started playing it, and that's great. But also because towards the end of me playing it so much, I would just be like yelling at myself in my head and be like, no, that's dumb. We're not going to do that. I should be able to do this instead. And then, so it's nice to kind of be able to exercise that IRL without yelling, but just be like, that thing's wrong. I was wrong. My past self was incorrect, and we should fix it this way. In a context that's like more geared towards that. So that's, and I don't know. I mean, maybe part of that works because we're in this context where like everything is actually really separated. So there's a lot of room to think in a weird way. I might respond differently if I were in the room with 8 people trying to figure out the same thing at the same time.
I've been it's been an optimistic moment to see this type of collaboration work in this way. I want to be in the same room as you making this music, and that will happen. But to see version 1.0 happen in this way, also I think means it makes a piece stronger. Like to me, I really respond to a piece that is strong enough to work in many different situations. Feels to me like there's some scaffolding there that's really strong. And this is a hard situation to make it work in. So I want to believe that then when we're in an easier situation together, it's going to get stronger and stronger,
I think so.
Maybe last-ish question. One of the things I think that So has learned from doing some of this flexible instrumentation kind of stuff, and I think you were conscious of from the beginning too, is that getting it out into the world is a chance to actually show that actually there are these different ways in. Because in this media, especially when things are videoed, I feel like, and especially by ensembles who were the commissioners, you can really start to see like, oh, this is the way the composer wanted it. So the idea that on the show February 4th, we're going to get to do 2 very different versions of it. And there's a wonderful idea floating out that maybe later in the spring we'll do an octet version of it to just kind of show a different side of it. And then to be able to live in the real world later and say, oh, actually it could be this, could be this, could be this. It feels like setting that trajectory from the beginning is really powerful.
I think it's really smart. I mean, I think doing the timing of everything kind of worked out really beautifully in working on Stay On It just before getting into like really notating a lot of this piece. Because through that, like at the beginning when we first had our Zoom meeting with everyone involved, which was like a lot of people, we talked about where there's this version and they do this thing, but then there's this original version and this recording where they do that thing, but then there's this like video where they do this thing, and I was like, wow, it really like sets the rules, right? And then over the course of performing the piece, I found myself just breaking a lot of Eastman's rules and being like, you're fine, you're gonna be okay with this. You're this vibe. But I kept it in mind because I was like, oh, when I write a piece that's non-fixed, performance tradition becomes a real thing very fast, especially once something's documented in video. And so I know there were lots of times during the Zoom meetings where I was like, well, maybe cell percussion should do that, but maybe Bergamot should do the exact opposite and like do something really different and show that it's not the same, that it should be taken to very different places. That's kind of the only rule, is like it shouldn't be the same as someone else, you know? No. If something works, it works, and that's cool, and you can keep that. But never, I wouldn't want the piece to get to, if it's fortunate enough to be like performed a bunch, I wouldn't want it to get to a point where like people are saying it has to be this way because that's how the 2021 Brooklyn Bound original premiere release went. It's like no, just do the thing, you know. Personal experiences.
Please no.
Yeah.
we have a lot. We have a lot more versions of the piece out there that will be out there too. Right. I feel like that's the best version of, and a positive version of, performance practice. Like I feel like performance practice can lead to, it has to be this, and that just always feels really sad to me, you know. But performance practice, and I agree, like for me, learning about Stay On It and listening to different versions and getting an idea of what is in the world and then what's out of the world, and what's out of the world in a way that feels like it can push it in an okay space, and what's out of the world, it's like, no, this, you know, if it was written down in a different way, this would not be part of the world. But you know, learning as a performer how to take on those performance practice things in a responsible and exciting way feels really, really important, you know. And so I do think I love your score as it is so far. It's like a nice choose your own adventure novel, you know. And I think you do a great job of, like, you know, you kind of give a paragraph about the whole section and then get into the goals. Like, it all makes sense to me. And then also I'm sure it's going to develop over time, because I guess there's a way that a performer could do something that's really against your intentions, I guess, in terms of a topic that would be like, you know. But I also feel like if the performance practice is laid out there over the next some amount of time in a way that fits in with the openness you've given the score, it also could be hard to break, you know.
I think it'll kind of self-weaponize in an interesting way, to be like, oh, you're choosing to take this piece over here, that now you're saying something really particular that, like, I think people would understand it. It'll be a really interesting message to send. Not that I really want that to happen, but I think there's a weird fail-safe in the piece because of that. Yeah.
All right. So last thing, we were on the last call that we were on. I think we were like, well, I guess we need a title. Somebody's asking us for a title. We should give them a title. You gave us a great title, Individuate. That from what I gathered, that was on your mind, and you were pretty sure that was the title, but you were gonna test some other things. Was that the thing? And why is it called Individuate?
Well, I was still waiting to see if something else better would come up, but no, I mean, that's what the piece is. It's a process of individuation, of like, these 4 different characters are actually all just one person. The quartet represents like the experience of a single person going through stress or trauma, and then coming out the other side of it in a healthier state, ideally. And then being able to join like a collective of others. So if you hear chants at the beginning, they're going to be things that are just chaotic and a mess, and none of it really makes sense. There's a lot happening in the first section. Then there's a section of just stasis, meditation, and then out of that we join each other. Everyone's in the same tonal land. Everyone's pushing with the same type of emotional affect. No one's trying to sabotage anyone else, unlike in the first section. And it's kind of with the goal of like rushing out into joining things. So it's the individuation, right? Like really becoming yourself for the sake of joining others.
Love it. We are excited about it. So is busy getting our version polished and finished off, but we're excited about.
I'm excited too.
You know, we've been doing it a little along the way, so it's not even scary. It's just exciting to get it together and to present.
It's gonna sound great. I mean, everyone's so good. All of y'all have played it so beautifully, so thank you.
Absolutely, and I'm equally excited to see where Bergamot's going to be. This show is February 4th. It's at 7 p.m. Eastern time. on YouTube is where we all gather. Come gather with us on YouTube. I think you can gather on Facebook if you like, but Darian will be on YouTube, expertly commenting in the chat, responding to everything you have to say in beautiful, positive, and appropriately quippy ways.
We'll see. Yeah, probably appropriate.
Yeah, that seems right.
Yeah.
Awesome, Darian. Thanks for hanging and talking about this stuff.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
You're wonderful. Have a great rest of your day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.